The next basic adjustment is with your exposure, and that is the brightness of your photo. In Mac Photos and in really any photo editing app, there are lots of ways to adjust the overall exposure or individual parts of the exposure. And usually you can adjust just the darks, just the highlights, just the very black parts or the very white parts of your image. In the future lessons taken from the entire Mac Photos course in this section, I go through things like levels and curves and how to adjust exposure with that. But the easiest way is with this light drop down menu under the adjust features. The way that Photos app works is for any of these basic adjustments, there's sort of an overall adjustment that you can make by clicking and dragging this bar up at the top. So if I click this and drag to the right or left, you can see that it's making adjustments, making it darker, making it brighter, and it's trying to automatically make things look better. You'll see that these options down here that I have opened are also adjusting when I do this. Now, after I make some sort of change, I can undo it by clicking this little undo arrow up at the top of this adjustment. What I want to show you is that you can adjust the different parts of the image, because while this image, it's relatively exposed well, it's a little bit too bright. But the part that's too bright are sort of the highlights. And so here we have the overall exposure that you might go to first and say, okay, I'm going to bring down the exposure. But as I do that, it starts to look a little weird. It looks like I'm just putting over sort of a dark black overlay over the entire image. And when Sam's face and his skin starts to look normal, the background looks a little bit subdued, and I don't like that. If I take the highlights though, this is just affecting the parts of the image that are a little bit brighter. And that's the part that I think is a little bit too overexposed. If I go to the right, it gets brighter, and that's not what I want. But if I take this to the left, that starts to look a little bit better. For the shadows, this is the darker part of the image. This is in Sam's hair and the jacket that he was wearing. And bringing this down, whoops, that's the highlights. Bringing the shadows down, that can add a little bit more contrast to it as well. Brightness is sort of similar to exposure. It's sort of an overall dramatic brightness, making it a lot brighter or darker, making all parts of the image darker or all parts brighter. I don't like that, so I'm going to take that back down to 0. Contrast is if you want to add a little bit more style and making the darks darker, the brights brighter. Adding contrast, dragging this to the right will make the darks darker, the brights brighter to make it more contrasty. Dragging to the left makes it less contrasty and makes all the colors sort of flatter. The darks will become brighter, the brights will become darker. I don't want to touch that right now. And the last thing under this light adjustment is the black point. Dragging to the right will make the blacks blacker. Dragging to the left will make the blacks whiter. So if you want sort of that flat, if you've seen a lot of commercials of late, they like this sort of flat look. It's kind of a cool style if you're going for that. But basically for Sam's photo, all I'm going to do is bring down the highlights a bit and also bring down the shadows a bit, which makes it look a little bit more like I want it to look. If I want to see what it looks like before and after, I can click this button to show photo without adjustments by clicking, and then with adjustments by undoing the click. With adjustments, without adjustments. Be careful of clicking this revert to original button, because that's going to take back all of the edits we made, including crop and any adjustments. So if you want to just undo all of the light adjustments we've made, just click this button, the back button up here in this menu. So that's basic exposure adjustments in the Photos app. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at fixing white balance.